Hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner of YouTube. My name's Angela, and I'm currently an artist after spending 28 years as a science teacher. And that teacher is still in me, that desire to teach and to help people and to encourage you to have a go and to find the confidence to do things and hopefully dispel some of the things we've been told about what an artist is, to show that actually we're all artists. Part of being human is the ability to be creative. Finding out what kind of creativity you enjoy, what gives you pleasure, is the most important thing. And to have pleasure out of being creative doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be good at it or professional. Excuse me. It's about enjoyment. And that's what I hope to bring here, as well as that encouragement to explore and to try things out and to find out what works for you, what brings a soft, warm glow to your arty heart as you work. And I don't know if I'm achieving that. I hope I am. This is a journey for me as well. So I invite you to join me on my journey. And I'm so happy that so many of you have. I'm absolutely astounded that there's over 700 people have subscribed, which amazes me. I'm so glad that people are liking my videos, that you're leaving lovely comments as well, and thoughtful and sometimes thought-provoking, which is brilliant. So with no further ado, let me get along to what I'm going to do today. You can see under the camera I've got some materials here I'm planning on using. I never have a very clear idea of what I'm going to do or how my videos are going to pan out. I'm not entirely sure that doing a motif a day over a series of days is useful. We'll see how it goes, but we'll see what happens. So I've got some pens to draw with. I've got a pencil in case I need to make any pencil outlines or whatever, or I think they would be useful. Another pen. So I've got a Tombow Fudenasuki. It's the it's the softer version I've picked up. You can tell it's soft. There's this little box here. It's green if it's soft and it's blue if it's a harder nib. Flexible nibs so I can change the width. And I got two Unipin pens here. I've got an 03 and an 01. My pencil. This one happens to be an 03 size lead. And I know I've got the Uni smudge proof lead in it, and I think it's a 2B, which means the softer it is, the easier it is to erase, the less likely it is to indent your paper. And I've got a selection of markers. The brand I've dug out is Ohuhu's because they're actually the easiest to get out. And I've got a range of yellowy greens, some peachy, pinky, salmony colours, some yellows, and I've also got warm greys and green greys as well, fairly light ones for shadows. So I'll pop some of those out the way because it can get a bit cluttered here. I'm just going to press my autofocus while I'm at it and hope that that will autofocus lock, so that will keep things in focus so it's not going in and out and giving me and you seasickness. Okie dokes. So I thought I'd carry on today with the theme of sort of like ocean, sea-based, water-based things because, well, they're fun and interesting, and it's going to be a bit different mostly to what I'm doing in the book that I really need to start work on. I say this all the time, but today I really do. So so I thought that would be fun, and I thought I'd just start looking at things that you could find in an ocean. I love plants, I love fish, I love shells, but let's have a break from shells and do some things that perhaps I haven't done with you before, or if I have, forgive me, but also there's no harm in revisiting things and having a look at them again in a different way. And I have to start with something that's circular. I just do, and I'm going to start by arranging 3 oval shapes like this. But this paper I've got here is from a sketchbook. I can't remember the brand, but it's very smooth. It's a contrast to the one the design and sketch on, which I like. but the smoother paper doesn't wreck my nibs as quickly. So I'm trying to be environmentally conscious, if nothing else. And for these, I'm actually going to put a darker area. This is a brand new Tombow. I love them when they're brand new, and I haven't, applied too much pressure to the nibs, so they're just all thick lines. So I've put these to the outside. I also am going to fill this in. There is just something lovely. I don't know what it is about having these sticking outwards. This kind of pattern, the arrangement I've got here, just pleases me. And I think I'm going to, because I enjoy doing this, pop something around them as if they're sat inside a seed case and we're looking inwards. But I then want to add something that's vaguely circular. And I have deliberately drawn that so it is not a perfect circle. I am not trying to draw perfect circles. That's not the name of my game at all. So my autofocus isn't on. It's being daft. Hang on. I hate it when it bounces in and out. It irritates me. Oh, there we go. I think it's worked. And I'm just going to very simply put some radiating lines here, just to split this up into segments. Some of the lines are a bit wobbly, but I'm fine with that. So that makes me quite happy. I could put another border around the outside, but there's something about this one. I like it just as it is. For now, I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, let's have a go with something a little bit different. Based on the same thing, I'm going to arrange these three in the centre in the same kind of way. And perhaps this time only put a small area of black here. I'm just going to put that line around it. And when it comes to adding colour, I'm not going to try and colour that little area with an alcohol marker. If you're using any other colouring medium, you do as you wish. I'm not saying you have to use alcohol markers, but I've really warmed to them. I am going to pop this straight around. I'm not doing the inner aura, but this time I am going to put pairs of lines with wider segments, wider sections. Once I've added colour, I may want to come back and add some pattern to this because I can. And that's narrower segments here, and I'm fine with that. If I wanted to be very precise, I'd draw everything with a ruler and protractor and rulers and things. But I don't. I want I suppose my individuality to show through in the way that I draw lines, I create patterns and shapes. And I think this is why I'm sort of want to do better with hand lettering, want to explore hand lettering, which is why I've been taking the Domestica course. Because as lovely as typography is, the ability to make it perfect with computers, there is something warm, human, about hand-drawn letters, hand-drawn typography, that says something unique about it, about the person who created it. And although I'm giving instruction here and showing you the steps I take, the shapes, the basic way of, having confidence in building a motif up or a pattern up, I still want to encourage you to make it your own. So if you don't like something that I've done, alter it anyway and see where it takes you. These are only starting points for exploration, and it's a journey. And I've never drawn this one before. This one I haven't actually, come to think of it. I haven't used that round this particular centre. I'm not sure which one I like the most. I think they've both got their own charms. I quite like this for that edge. This one, I'm not so sure about these lines butting out, but we'll see what happens. But it is about putting your own individual stamp on things, is getting that confidence to do things in your own way, in the way that your handwriting is unique to you. Your art should be unique to you as well. And if something doesn't make you happy when you draw it, don't draw it. You may come back to it later in time, but for now don't, or change it until you are happy with it, until it makes you smile. So these are making me smile. Okay, I'm going to arrange 3 in the middle in a slightly different manner. This is the basic structure of my motif here, is having 3 sort of like ovalish shaped seeds or whatever are living in the middle of this, and I am just treating them to an outer frilly coat, I suppose. This outer edge, outer layer. And this one I am going to do like this. I'm going back to this one because this is making me uncomfortable. Yep, I'm going to just do that here. So I've got this sort of layer around them, but it's behind these spokes, and that's already instantly adding some sense of dimension here to thicken these lines, because I missed there a little bit. Rather than leave one thing as standing out as jarring, you just do the same kind of thing to others, and it then looks like it's deliberate. Okay, excuse me. I do like this around the central area. So I've got this, and I'm going to make use of these. Now I can see that they're there. This is part of it all. I find it hard to imagine what I'm going to draw until I sit down and draw. I sometimes have a very clear vision. Sometimes I start with one thing and see how it goes, and then it's one step at a time. So here I started with the central area, then I did this. I decided to do that because I thought it would enclose this collection in the middle and separate it from the lines, which it's done. And then, then I added the lines. Then I decided I didn't want this outside edge like I've got here. This one, I started with the middle, I put the outside and then the lines in and so on. But I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I'm just trying different things out. Here, I decided I wanted to arrange these in this way, but I didn't know how this was going to change or, work out. So I didn't have the idea of putting these more rounded ended sections here to nestle into these little curved shapes. And I find that quite nice. Now then, for these ones, this could be a mistake, or I may end up with something I'm not very keen on. I'm swapping where the wider end is so that there's a variation here, and I'm just going in and doing what Tangle called rounding, just filling in little nooks and crannies and thickening the end of the lines just to give them a nicer kind of connection, like so. And I'm not sure about that one, not sure about it, but I'll work it out. I'm going to leave as it is for now. Okay, so let's go for 3 of these kinds of seeds or shapes in the middle, like so, and perhaps let's have a long thin shape there. And perhaps in the middle here I will just put a circle as if we've got a centre. Okay, I am going to draw the line in, because as I was drawing this I thought, oh, it'd be nice to do this, except I didn't have this outside edge to work from. So what I've done here is it's almost like I've extended this inside bit, this line, and then curved it around, and then a straight line there. Same there. Like this. So this is almost like we've got something that's beginning to open up, and I am going to pop some other lines in here, and I'm just going to bend the ends a little bit, perhaps, as if to suggest there might be some curvature going on. So if we imagine this is a bit like a sea urchin opening out, or a seed pod opening out, and I think that would work quite nicely. Perhaps I'll do one more on this row of a variation on these 3, and I think perhaps I'll have 3 almost like kidney beans, red kidney beans. I'm not sure if they're called that in America, but some kind of bean going on there. And in the centre I think I'll just pop some little dots, and again I think I'll pop the outside circle in. I've mostly got these centrally, just noticed, but if I wanted to use this in a drawing I could choose to move this around anywhere. I'm not going to play with that, but it's possible to do. I'm going to use these areas here where these beans sort of connect or join to add my first set of lines, I think. And do I want to add any more? I think I'm going to take this as an example here and perhaps add that as in that kind of way. And this one, just adding some lines there. That adds an intensity of ink that suggests shadow, that these are floating above the background. And I could do the same here, but I think I'm going to use colour for that. So I've done those 5. We'll come back. I'll do something different. What time have we got? Oh, less than 20 minutes. So let's have a look at some colour here. Okay, I'm going to use some greens for this. I've got decided I'd like to use grey-green for the shadows. So I'm working to the left and bottom of everything to add shadow. You know, it's my usual way of working, though actually I must probably could get away with going all the way around this with shadow. This paper is a little bit thirsty for the ink, but that's fine. It does go through to the reverse, but I'm okay with that because this will eventually be adhered to my sketchbook page. So my sketchbook is going to end up rather thick. This is a slightly darker colour, and I'm adding it here. I'm finding it hard to make it a thinner line because it is actually feathering out into the darker area quite a bit, or the the damp area quite a bit, which is a nice kind of thing, but annoying at the same time. Should have used marker paper. Go back to the paler version, and I'm just going to use that to just spread this a little bit. So it's to get, I was just questioning myself then whether this was the paler green-grey. Of course, remembering that these do dry lighter when you put them on. So let me do this to all of them, so when I come back this will have dried. So here I want to make this background area quite dark, so I'm using this colour, but I know I'm going to use the darker one more. I'm going to pop some shadow in the centre and towards the edges of these, trying to leave the top in highlight. I'm going to put shadow underneath each of these spokes, so what is underneath will change as we go around. So that one I've chosen to pop there. Could put a little bit there, because the top and the bottom one you'd get to see a little bit of shadow on each side, I think. And then I'll come back with the darker one. I said I wanted to make this quite dark, so I'll fill this area behind the seeds with the darker colour. And then perhaps just add a little bit along the edges. It might be a bit broken, depending on how my hand wants to work. A bit thicker than I want it. It's still fairly early in the morning. What time is it? Oh, it's nearly 9 o'clock. And I'll come back with paler colour and just tease this one out a little bit, the darker bands, get it to blend. I neglected to pop my colourless blender out here, but it'll be fine. You can already see with the first one as it's drying how much it's drying back compared to this one, so that gives me a good gauge as to what I want to do here. With these I'm looking at shadow towards the middle and underneath these. Now I'm going to pop some shadow in under this section actually. There's kind of two ways to add shadows to a drawing. One way is to use logic and to be consistent about how you use it. So anything that would cast a shadow below it or around it, you can add shadow to without any reference to a light source. The light sources are what make it believable that you're looking at things with a light source. But it's not essential. It's just got to be logical and believable that there's dimension. So I tend to work with the idea of a light source that's to the top right. So the shadows will mostly be to the left and bottom. But you can put a light source anywhere you like, as long as you're consistent about it, or you just work with, as they do in Zentangle, using shadow as an extra part of the pattern to add that dimension. So that will, I think, will most probably do here. I will just feather this out a little bit more, trying to leave areas that are going to be white so that we have highlights there. This one, I definitely want these inner areas. I'm having to have a very light hand here to just get to these areas with this darker colour. I was considering whether I was going to do these ones in between, and it looks like my hand has decided that we're going to. I was going to leave them and have them as a raised ridge, but it'll be fine. Moving paper around. I trimmed my nails last week, and I tend to trim them quite short. They get in the way if they're too long. My days of having false nails have long gone because my asthma doesn't like the chemicals in the air and so on. So I want to go. Oh no, I did do that one. And they also get in the way when I'm working on a computer screen. They tend to catch the screen and cause me to have lines where I don't want lines, or strange things to happen. So I have made a decision that perhaps I will be better off not having them anymore. So I had lovely nails for a while in that kind of sense. Just feather that down a bit as well, just to make it'll be fine. And this one again, I want to use that darker colour to fill behind these, like so. I'm going to pop dark colour underneath these as well, and have some shadow towards the middle of this. I think I might fill that with the darker colour, but I can pop some of the lighter one in the middle because it will help to bleach it out a bit. Here I'm just going to add some of the lighter colour. I'm going to do the same along the edge. This is where I sometimes wish I'd chosen markers that had bullet points instead of the brush tip. I haven't done enough of my hand-eye coordination practice this morning, as in practice drawing, but it will be fine. Let's give these just a bit of shadow top and bottom. That just helps to bring the sense of dimension in. And talking of these, they're going to need some shadows as well. Do those top and bottom, like so, and these as well. I think particularly here, I'm more interested in getting shadow towards the middle in this one, because I think I want them feeling that they are bending down and going underneath these seeds. So these would be in a fair amount of shadow, which is why I'm using the darker green grey as well as the lighter one, just to extend that shadow a little bit and to bleach it out. So that'll work quite nicely. And I must probably do need just a hint of shadow along the edges. Like so. So there we are, we've got these, so I no longer need those. Okie dokes, let's have a look. I wanted to do these in greens and perhaps greeny yellows. I'll see how I get on. This is it's GY7, it's called Sugarcane, so it's one of the lighter greeny yellows. And I think for this one I'm going to do every other of these in the Sugarcane. I'll choose either peach or yellow, I'm not quite sure which yet, to do the other sections. I could do this just all in this one colour and it would look great, but while I've got stripes, oh phew, I just realised that I may not have had an even number of stripes and I had to go, oh no, I've got to do it all in one colour. But that one's worked quite nicely. So that is that one. Which is the next one? This is a yellow green. These are Ohuhus and it is called yellow green. So it's slightly darker and I'm going to use that in the areas that are shadowed. Now I haven't left any white area here. I've used colour over the whole section because, you know, I like a bit of white gel pen. Just some little dots to bring the highlights out. The dots add some texture because alcohol markers really are very smooth in the way you apply them and the colours you get. So for this one I'm just trying to touch just the edge of these darker colours just to help them blend in just that little bit more so we don't have harsh edges. There we go, so that's already beginning to look a bit dimensional. And perhaps I'll use the darkest green, a little bit of that. This is GY5 in the Ohuhus, called Absinthe. So it's another yellowy green, but we're getting towards a mossy kind of green. So I am just putting the tiniest amount I can right along the edges of this, and hoping that the dampness of the paper with the alcohol ink will allow this just to spread out that little bit. And if I can, not if I can, I know I'm going to, just go back with the middle colour and just help that to spread just a little bit more perhaps. Whatever this paper is, because I can't remember, it actually is quite nice to blend the alcohol inks on because it saturates quite quickly and it stays wet for quite a while with the alcohol. So can't fault that. There we are. That adds that darker colour, so we've really got that feeling of a doming going on. I think I may use yellows in between. So this one is one of the, I think it might be the lightest yellow in the set. It's called barium yellow. It's Y3. So it's got a hint of green, orange about it on the paper, but it is actually quite it's a powdery kind of yellow colour. Or I can't describe it in any other way. It's quite pastel, but it's not a warm yellow and it's not a cool yellow. So this makes it look like there's some orange in it, and I suppose there may be a little hint of it. And then I've got Y1, which is a pastel yellow, and this is really quite a strong yellow for a pastel. But I'm going to pop it in the darker areas again, and just around the edge a little bit. Using the yellow green or the green grey as a shadow will be nice under this because it will add almost a metallic look, I think. And then I do have another yellow. This is Y2. Oops, wrong end. Which this one is called Sunflower. And it's quite a bit darker than the one I've just used, the pastel yellow, in its way, but it will blend out. And I've got I've got more confidence in the paper to allow me to do that than I did to begin with. So that actually looks quite nice. So I'm going to use the barium yellow, I think, just to blend all of this out. I like the yellow and the yellowy green together actually. I've said before how I feel I struggle with colours, and I really do think I do. By sticking to a fairly limited colour palette like this, I feel I get a much better result. Okay, and then I've got two colours here. I've got a palish pastel pink, and I've got so that's R20, so it's a red. But for the darker tone, I've got salmon pink, which is in the Ohuhus, it's a YR4. wouldn't necessarily have used the grey-green as a shadow here, but I think it'll work out just fine. I do. And I've got that ring in the middle. I forgot about that. So I'm going to use, I want that darker grey-green. Yeah. I'm going to try and add that in where shadow perhaps would be darkest. Right around the edge like that, but I'm going to fill the rest of it in with the absinthe. And although it looks really dark now, bear in mind this really does dry back quite a bit. Because the poor pinky yellows look really insipid up against it, don't they? And I will, just around the edges, add some of the yellow-green, the lighter tone. So though I haven't got my colours blender out, this will work as a bleaching agent. It will bleach some of that colour out, which it has done. And I also think the bearing yellow is quite a greeny yellow in a strange way, but I think I'm going to glaze over the top of these with it just to add a yellower tone. So I've got a pinky yellow tone. That'll take a little while to dry, but I'm quite happy with that. It looks acidy green, and on the screen the colours are warmer here with my eyes. The other thing I want to do, which is something I haven't done very often, but I am going to do today, is I'm going to add a bit of a drop shadow here, just to give a feeling that this is floating off the paper somewhat. And to do that, I'm sticking to my rule of to the left and the bottom, like so. And I'm doing it very simply. I'm using kind of ideas you get from hand lettering, which is you make them quite solid and don't worry too much about reflected light and reflected shadow and so on and so forth. It's the impression that there's light and perhaps this is not flat on the surface, but there is some shadow here, and I am going to just make this a bit thicker where perhaps over here where the shadow would be perhaps darkest. But then I'm going to go back with the lighter colour and just blend the edges out, especially up here where it's quite noticeable, but you just do that and it'll blend, and as it dries it'll become less obvious and just add that sense that something's floating. Okay, let's go to this one, and I'm going to do these ones here with the pink and the salmon, which is going to be interesting with the grey-green undertones, but I think it'll be okay. So I do so much better with colouring if I pick a very limited number of colours. So having just the greeny yellows, the yellow and this peachy pink. The peachy pink is here for that little bit of contrast, or salmony pink. Then I just feel I get a better overall finish or overall look, more coherent and less random, I suppose. And I'm just using this salmon pink. I could have done with a darker colour as well, I think, for this, but it's okay, it'll do. I'm not going to go firtling through the bag of markers looking for a darker version of this. This will do for now. Just go back with this and just blend some of this out. so. And then perhaps I will take that light yellow again and just glaze this. It will bleach some of the colour out because it's quite a pale colour. A lot of alcohol, not so much pigment. But I think it'll be fine. We'll have a warmer tone there. It's going to look darker because the paper becomes a bit translucent as well when I'm working on it. Of course, I've got my black side of a craft mat underneath me, so that will show through. I'll leave that to dry. It's okay. Pastel yellow. Good. There we go. So we're going to have greens for the seeds in here. So I'm going to start by adding the palest green to all of them, all of the section, like so. I've got the next darkest green, and I'm just going to add that where I want shadows, so to the edges and the lower part, I think. And then I've got absinthe, which will really darken this, so I want to be very cautious in its use. This is the darkest yellow green I've chosen. And I may come back and I'll see how I feel. I'm not entirely sure I want to use a dark green in that darker part. I may do actually. So where's the absinthe? It's there. Quite like that orangey colour that I've created around this. I want to see what it's like when it dries, so I can see whether it's a colour that I particularly like or not. I'm going to use that barium yellow as well, these spokes, because I'm going to use I'm going to put them in as yellow. So I'll want the pastel yellow next, bearing in mind that I want the inner area darker than the outside edge. Because I do want that feeling that we've got things, oh, wrong side, brush side, that this is dipping down and under the seeds. Not sure that it's going to work out. I could do with a darker colour, but that is where I could potentially perhaps use this salmon pink. Just a hint of it perhaps, just to go there. Just to darken that edge, just that little bit more. And I'll leave that to dry now. The first one is, you can see how much it comes through on the back. Said it hasn't come through too much, it's not bleeding through the paper and anything else, but it's no more than the marker paper I was using. This is a lot cheaper alternative as well. So I've got choices. I like this as it is. This one though is a bit plain in places. This one's got a lot of dimension, this one not so much, but I think this would be perfect. 1, 2, 3. I've got to remember where I start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can alternate them. So I'm going to pop in one of my favourite patterns to use to fill spaces, and it's Betweed. I'm beginning to understand that it's okay to have favourite patterns that you use again and again and again, but put them together in different combinations, different ways. And I'm sure that the favourites I want to use will vary over time as well. There's just something lovely about having something woven here. And as I'm doing this, part of me is thinking, Angela, you could have done with a brown or a different colour pen here. I'm thinking, yeah, I could have, but I'll use black for now. Something to think about in the future. I'm just going to pop lines there to fill those spaces in because they're quite big corners. It's like this one needs just a couple of lines on either side to fill those in. I used to be worried I didn't fill the whole area with exactly the same pattern at one time. And now I'm sort of like, yeah, it's okay, it works. It's fine. We can live with that one. Looks like it plays the part. I don't know if people actually go up and, I'm sure there are people who microscopically examine artwork to see that everything is perfect and pristine, and I'm getting to the point where, yeah, that'll do. That actually has added a lot to it. It's made it a lot more interesting, I think. It's almost like I want to do something here, and I think what I'm going to do in these other ones, I'm going to keep it fairly simple, but I'm just going to put a row of black dots down the centre, just to add some interest here. And of course I will be getting my white gel pen out, which I will do presently. The question is that in my pencil case, so I've got to go and hunt for this. Yeah, need to hunt for one, but I know exactly where they are. It's not so much hunting, it's the fact I have just way too many pencil cases at the moment. Most probably I could be accused of having way too many pens, but I'm happy with things as they are. So I've got a piece of just scrap paper here for me to get the gel pen working on. And for this one, I think, see, I want to put a highlight here, but I also want to put some dots down. I think I'm going to put the dots down the green areas. At the beginning of each of these rows of dots, I'm just sort of like circling the pen a little bit. Actually, I really like that. So rather than do a distinct highlight, I'm going to repeat that in the yellow. I could have been brave and dug out a gold pen or gold glitter pen. I have a bit of a thing for gold glitter pens. But I think that just, does it show up on the camera? It does. That just looks just fab. And I'm just going to put a couple around here, and I am going to pop one big white one to give that highlight there. Then here I'm going to put them on either side of the rows of black dots. And here I'll pop them there, and perhaps a couple either side. Here, perhaps one in there. And towards the end of this, where I want it to look brightest, as if it's catching the light. The areas with betweeds, there's not a lot I want to do there. I think I'll just leave that as it is. And I think the last thing that I need to do is, oh, I used warm grey for the shadow there, and I wanted to use the grey, you know, the cooler green. So here we go. It's okay though. This is where the colourless blender would be useful to blend that harsh edge out. But just realised that about the warm grey over there. I was wondering why it was. I was thinking that doesn't look right. This is the reason why. It's because I used the warm grey. So I am just going to go back with this darker colour and just use the lighter one just to help it blend, not have such a harsh line, and just get that there. Drop shadows aren't my skill at the moment. It's working it out, and the way to work it out and to learn how to do it is to do it and make mistakes and work out from there how you prefer it to be. So that feels like it's really floating really high off, and the light's almost directly above it, not quite. So I think that's where I'm going to leave this for today. I've used some alcohol markers of different shades and colours, so if I put a selection there. So I've basically used greens and peaches and yellows. I've used some pens as well, and I haven't used a pencil, but I've also used a white gel pen. So we've used quite a few things here, and I haven't finished colouring them in because we're up to 50 minutes, which is quite a long one. And it's just, I know that these 5 drawings here I've done, starting with from this one as the base, I know there's a lot more could be done, but it's fun to leave others for another day. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that you give drawing these a go and adding colour. You don't have to use alcohol markers. Use whatever colouring mediums you have in your stash or that you're comfortable with. Use appropriate paper if you've got it available to you. So if you're going to use watercolour paper, use paper that will work with watercolour well. And just have fun and see what happens. And if you approach art with the idea that I'm just going to enjoy what I do, I'm going to make my heart and my soul happy, then that's the only reason you need to make art. So take care, look after yourselves, be creative, and I'll see you again soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.